Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're gonna do something that I think is gonna be really fun, and that is going to be to compare 5 different levels of Fender Stratocaster. Seen a bunch of different videos doing this concept. I actually recently saw a Rhett Shull video where he looked at like 5 different levels of Strat that you can buy right now. And they're all guitars you can get on like Sweetwater and whatnot. I think that's a great concept. I think that's cool, but I think that's only part of the picture. And anytime I watch that style video, I'm always like, man, I wish they compared, this guitar that was, 20 years old that you can go buy now on the used market. As I know, a lot of us are not gonna be limiting ourselves to just new guitars. We're open to a bigger variety of stuff than what you can just get on like Sweetwater or Guitar Center or any of that. I picked out 5 different Strats around 5 different price points, and today we're going to compare them all, shoot them out, and talk about who each one of these is for. Let's get into it. The first one we're gonna show is the one I'm holding right here, and this is a 1992 Fender Standard Stratocaster made in Mexico. I personally love the finish on this. You do get the proper rosewood board, as you still got that with Mexico guitars for many years, and it wasn't until recently they started using Palfero, but it's nice to see they actually are going back to rosewood. But this is way before any of that was in the conversation, and they all just had rosewood boards. This is a pretty cool example, actually some interesting kind of figuring on the headstock. This is a very bare bones Strat. Every time that I get one of these, I'm a little nostalgic, as when I first started doing a flash for the gear, had a lot of different Mexican Strats and Tellies like this. And when I first started playing and getting my first Fenders, it was always stuff like this and not the higher end stuff. So always fun to play these. This is gonna be the most cost-effective guitar, the most entry-level guitar out of this video. You can usually get these used for around $500 to $600. The next one is going to be the proper companion to that one, which is the American Standard Stratocaster. This has now been replaced with the American Professional 2. This is the classic. Growing up playing, this was always kind of the flagship Fender. This particular example is from 1996, and it's actually part of their 50th anniversary line. Again, got a different cool blue color this time. But I love this series. I think they're a great, just workhorse guitar. This is Fender's attempt at doing a very similar thing as the Fender Mexico guitar, but just better. So this is the natural step up from that Fender Mexico guitar, at least by Fender standards. Market value for an American Standard Strat can be all over the place depending on color, but in general, anywhere from like $1,000 to $1,400, right around $1,200 is kind of the sweet spot that I see. So comparing to the American Standard, this is going to be the closest guitar price point. This is a Fender Japan ST62, so a reissue of a 62 Stratocaster from 2012. This one features a gorgeous dark rosewood board, amazing figuring on the back of the neck, and it's just a extremely well-built example through and through. This one actually comes stock with US pickups, same sort of pickups as you'll get with an American vintage Fender, so that's pretty cool. As far as Japanese Strats go, it's a pretty top shelf Strat, some great parts, and you'll see these kind of sell in a similar price range, maybe a little more than an American Standard, as within each Fender line, the reissue stuff tends to go for a bit more than the standard stuff, so this actually falls in around the same price as the American Standard. Keeping within the theme of 62 reissue Strats, we have this American Vintage Stratocaster and a gorgeous ice blue metallic with the matching headstock. This example is from 2001 and was a limited run for the store Mars Music back when that was around. This has a lot of similar appointments to the Japanese reissue of the 62 Stratocaster, but this one features a nitro lacquer finish, at least on the top coat, and otherwise is actually pretty similar. It's also got a rosewood board. This one in particular is not as dark as the Japanese one. The fit and finish of this one is going to be a little bit higher end than the Japanese Strat, but otherwise they're definitely in the same ballpark. I personally love the aesthetics with this one with the matching headstock. Finding this color is pretty hard, so this is pretty cool. A guitar like this, depending on color, can run anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000, so comfortably about twice as much as the Japanese example or the American Standard Stratocaster. The 5th guitar we're going to be checking out, and the most prestigious of the bunch, is going to be this 1977 Fender Stratocaster. Of course, made in the USA, as they were only made in the USA back then. This is a proper vintage guitar. Lovely black aesthetics, big headstock. We love that. This is a proper Strat. I wanted to include this one since it is a vintage guitar, but it does kind of fall into a similar price class as the other guitars in this video, with usually a 70s, late 70s Strat kind of starting around $2,500, going all the way up to $3,500 or more, depending on what the specs are. So this one will come in just a little more than the American Vintage, but it is actually a vintage guitar, so pretty cool. Let's plug these in and let's see what they sound like. We are plugged into my Fender 65 reissue deluxe reverb. We got 2 mics on it. We have a Shure SM57 just off the cone and a Sennheiser E609 just outside of that. I've blended those two, and we've also blended in these Neumann TLM 103 mics as stereo room mics, giving our sound a little bit of space. So now that we've played all of them, let's talk about each one a little bit. This is the first one we checked out. This is the 92 Mexican Standard Stratocaster, and it's a great entry point for a Strat. I would say this strikes way above your typical like Squire that you get today. I like this a lot better than the modern Player Series Strats. It definitely feels like it's in the price point it is. I think this is a good value for what it is. Unsurprisingly, this is probably my least favorite out of all the ones we played, but I still think they do their job. It's a very reliable guitar. The neck actually is pretty comfortable in here, so I like that. Sound-wise, to me, this one definitely sounded the most compressed. Gave me the least back compared to the other ones. This one just felt like it was full volume at all times, no matter how much, like no matter how hard I picked or how soft I picked. This kind of gave me a similar result. Maybe not as vibey as some of the other ones. It does the job, but if you have the budget, I might push a little above this. Pushing up to the American Standard, this one definitely felt like a welcome upgrade from the Mexican Standard Strat. This thing feels great. It stays in tune really, really well, and everything just feels a little better on here. The neck profile is just a little more comfortable. Fit and finish feels better. Even just the edges of the neck on this are way more welcoming than on like the Mexican one. Pickups are also pretty compressed on this, but definitely give a little bit more room than those did. This one felt a little more responsive. It's easy to see why this is the flagship and why this is regarded the way it is. It's a pretty straight up Strat. I kind of said this in the last one, but compared to the last three on this list, this one kind of didn't have as much personality as the next three did. This to me is just kind of your right down the middle American Strat. It does what it's supposed to do. It does everything you need to and nothing else. Solid across the board. And if you're looking for a guitar to take on the road, something that's gonna be reliable and do the Strat thing, this is a pretty good place to look. Moving into the vintage and vintage style range, we have the 62 reissue Stratocaster from Fender Japan. I always really like these guitars, but this example in particular really, really impressed me. Everything on this plays and sounds great. It's definitely lower output than the last two guitars we looked at. With that lower output, it definitely feels like it has a bit more of a dynamic range to it. You really get out of this one what you put into it, and just the build quality is exceptional overall. There's really nothing that I could pinpoint on the American Standard that's any more there than this is. This kind of feels just as good, if not better, in certain areas. For me, the vintage aesthetics and appearance and neck profile and everything probably suit my taste a little better. I actually would probably prefer this over the American Standard, even though I know some people would always rank the American stuff higher. This really punches above that, and this is a really great Strat, but also worth noting, I kind of prefer the more 60s style ones to the more modern style ones, so that's worth taking into account. Once again, if you're touring, if you're gigging, this will be very reliable. This will sound great. Definitely a little noisier than the American Standard, so keep that in mind. This is a good Strat. As far as value goes, this might be the best one value-wise, as this is less than half the price of the next two, and it's right there with them. Moving on to our fourth Strat, we have another 62 reissue, but rather than being made in Japan, it's made right here in the States. This is the American Vintage 62 Strat. I also really, really like this one. I will note, going into this, I was expecting this one to by far be my favorite and blow everything else away as far as the ones we've already looked at. But actually, it was really close between this one and the Japanese one. Neck profile, I actually, and weirdly enough, I enjoyed the MIJ just a little bit more. Sound-wise, this one may have sounded a little better, but they were close. This one's definitely hotter. They have similar pickups, so that really surprised me how big of a difference there was. If you're looking for like a vintage correct Strat, especially for a studio environment, this is going to absolutely crush it. Once again, it's a little noisier than your American Standard, but it sounds great, and this is very true to a 62 Strat. I will say, because this has the nitro finish, this will wear really well over time, so if you are gigging, this will wear as you play it, which is good or bad. I personally really like that. I think that's cool, and this is definitely a guitar that would age with you, which is really rad. If you're in a gigging environment and you like vintage style, it's tough to choose between this and the Japanese one. If they were the same price, I'd probably go to the American Vintage, if for nothing else, the nitro lacquer finish. But being that it's half the price for the Japanese one, in most situations I'd probably go to the Japanese one if nitro lacquer is not at the top of your priority list. Yeah, fit and finish wise, this is the winner. Value wise, maybe the Japan is the winner. The last guitar on our list, the most expensive guitar on here, and the only one that is a proper vintage guitar, this is the 1977 Stratocaster. One fun note here, this being a 77, this is actually the first year that you'll see a 5-way switch from the factory. 76 and before, they always used a 3-way, even on Strats, so you'd only get each pickup, you wouldn't get the in-between. This is a great Strat. This has by far the most personality and the most vibe out of all of them. In a similar way to the American Vintage, this is a guitar that will definitely wear, it will definitely age with you, which is pretty cool. This is the heaviest by far. This feels the most substantial in like every single way, from neck profile to weight to the way it sounds. This is a lot of guitar. This might be a little much for certain people in a gigging environment. I know a lot of people prefer lighter guitars, so this one might not be the one if that's what you're after, but the vibe is really good here. It sounds really, really great. It is, again, a bit noisy, so keep that in mind. In a studio environment, it'd be really tough to choose between something like this or the American Vintage. That kind of just comes down to your personal taste, so I would have a hard time telling you one way or the other. Value-wise, I actually think, being that this is a proper American-made vintage guitar, this is tough to beat because for right around $3 grand, there's not a lot that you can get within the proper vintage realm. So to buy something like this now with the current market value would be a pretty good call if this is your vibe. I do love the big 70s headstock and just, I don't know, everything about this is so iconic, and this is not a reissue, this is the real thing, and the fact that you can get the real thing within a similar price range to like the reissue is tempting to say just go check out the real thing. This is pretty rad. So now that we've talked a little bit about each of these, I'm gonna talk about who each of these is for and what guitars I would choose in certain situations. So we'll start here since this is the one I have in my hands. If you're someone who is shopping for a vintage guitar and you're trying to decide, do I want a reissue, do I want a vintage one, you have the budget for it, I would get the real deal. I would get this 77 or a 70s Stratocaster. If you like the 70s look and this is what you want, there's no reason not to get the real thing. I think in the grand scheme of things, these are actually a pretty great value given the current vintage market, as these haven't gotten too crazy yet, and you can get them for just a little more than a reissue guitar. So if you're someone that's looking for a vintage one, especially if you're not gonna like tour it and everything, this is a great place to go. The only reason I don't necessarily always recommend touring vintage stuff is parts will need to get replaced. And if you have an all original example, that's not fun. So if you're someone who's looking for their first vintage guitar or just a great vintage Strat, I would check these out. 70s Fender is definitely something that is widely talked about if it's something that's great or not. We actually did a whole video on what's up with 70s Fender, so maybe go check that out if you want to learn more about this era of Fender. We're back to the American Vintage Strat. Let's talk about this one. If you're someone that really wants a guitar with a nitro finish, you want the 60s aesthetic or whatever reissue year that is you decide to go for, I think this is a great place to do it. I think without going to the Fender custom shop, this is the best recreations you can get of the classic Fender instruments, is their American Vintage line of all different varieties. I definitely prefer the original American Vintage stuff to the newer American Vintage 2, but those are solid as well. These sound fantastic, great for a studio environment. You can get a lot out of these. They stay in tune well, they're reliable. You can take these on the road too, of course, but I don't know, just for a studio environment, this feels like the right guitar. Back to our other reissue, which is the Japanese counterpart of the last guitar. Who is this one for? This could be for a lot of people, but if you want a vintage guitar, vintage style guitar, you don't have the budget to get into a actual vintage piece or even the American Vintage line, this is the place to go. As you guys heard, these sound very comparable, even though there was more of a difference than I expected, but it wasn't so much that one was better or worse, they just sounded a little different. This is an amazing sounding guitar. Once again, very reliable, will stay in tune well. If you want a vintage guitar to gig with, this is a great one, as you know, not that it's a cheap guitar, but it's not a huge liability to take this out and enjoy it and play it. That's what it was built for. I'm sure this would also do well in a studio environment. And just overall, if you like the vintage aesthetic, if you like the vintage sound, and you're looking for a great Strat around like the $1,300 price point, this is the one. The American Standard, the flagship. Who do I think this one is for? If you're someone that you don't care as much about something being vintage accurate, that's not like #1 most important for you, and you just need something that's gonna be reliable, whether you're taking it out, whether you're using it in a studio, this is a great place to go. This is not a vintage guitar. It doesn't feel like a vintage guitar. Lots of non-vintage appointments. The 22nd fret can even be a nice utility that is not vintage correct, but these sound fantastic. They stay in tune. And another thing that's worth noting is these are really easy to get parts for. So if this is something you're touring, it's easy to find, you know, drop-on replacements for the tuners if something was to go wrong, or really anything else on this guitar. It'll be just a little bit harder to find parts for the last ones that we've shown. I would say at this point, really any year of the American Standard is not going to be anything incredibly collectible, so I would not feel bad having to change parts as time goes on. These are great guitars and they can absolutely last a lifetime, and I once again think they are a great investment. And you just want a more straight up Strat with some nice quality of life changes compared to an old one. This is great. All right, and back to our entry point, back where we started and back where a lot of us started with our first Strat, the Fender Standard Strat made in Mexico all the way back in 1992. So who is this one for? This one is tough because if this is all you have the budget for, this can take you so far. It is a Strat, just like all the other ones on this list. As you heard, this definitely is in the room. This is not like a weird outlier, but it definitely is the most cost effective, and it definitely feels like it back to back with the others. If you're someone that has the budget for a Squire and maybe you can push up to this and you're trying to decide, do I want an old Fender Mexican Standard Strat or a newer Player Series, this might be a good place to go. I personally prefer these to the newer Player Series, but your mileage may vary, of course. That all comes down to personal preference. And if you need a reliable guitar for around $500 and you want a Strat, nothing wrong with this. If you can, I would really encourage pushing your budget up just a bit to get into the American Standard or a Japanese reissue guitar, if that's something you can swing. But at the end of the day, if this is the most you can afford, this is absolutely a great Strat. You can make awesome music with it, and this will not hold you back on your musical journey. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I hope you guys enjoyed taking a look at all these different Strats. Thank you very much to actually Rhett Shull for making his videos. That's what inspired me to make this one. No shade to anyone making the videos comparing only the new guitars, but I think that that's only part of the picture. So I had a lot of fun digging into our inventory and finding some stuff that you can't get into anymore, but still is worth talking about. Let me know down below in the comments what your favorite Strat was from this video, or if you have a Strat yourself that you really enjoy, let us know what you got and let us know what you recommend. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I know we always ask, but it does help out and helps us do more stuff like this. We will see you in another video soon. Bye.